everybody. Welcome to Todd Smith's first edition of the 100,000 Hour Podcast. Wow, that's incredible. I'll get to that later, but the first thing I want to do is introduce this incredible woman to my left. I've known her for so many years, and her personality's absolutely enchanting. She's funny. Every time I look at her, I start to laugh, and I mean it's in a great way. She's so smart and just so quick-witted, and she really makes me feel like most of the time like kind of a buffoon. That's not hard to do, but like music trivia, history, everything. She's just magnificent. So I want to introduce you to Courtney Birnstihl. Courtney, can you tell me a little bit about yourself?
Absolutely. Thank you, first of all, for inviting me on. This is great for your first
one.
time.
I know.
Yeah, first one.
Maybe the only one, though. We could get canceled. The guy in the booth's like, yeah.
They'll kick us out after the first one. We have known each other forever.
I know.
It's going on, I don't even want to say how many years.
Yeah, well, I'm actually only 1 year chronologically older than Courtney, but my appearance is probably like I'd look like her great uncle or something. But that's why we're going to talk. She's an expert on skin, by the way.
Yes.
So.
You had me on for 100,000 hours. My understanding is because of my expertise in skin and working with young women and pageantry and opening an actual beauty school, trade school.
Absolutely.
And the work that it involves to become that expert in your field, just like you have.
There's a great book called The Outliers by Malcolm Gladwell, and he says in the book, it takes 10,000 hours of concentrated study, work, and effort to kind of master something. And I think there's a lot of truth to that. And then I thought about it, it kind of dawned on me. I'm like, 10,000 hours. I think I started adding it up. I got 100,000 hours. And then, so I think it really changes your perspective on things. And that's why I was attracted to Courtney for this first podcast, because, there's so much conflicting information. And I, for myself and for everybody watching this, I want them to learn more about how to take care of their skin.
Mm-hmm.
It's the either first or second largest organ on the human body. And gosh, we need to take care of it. And especially as we're aging, what can we do? And what are the differences between skincare for men and women? So can you start off and tell me that, like, are there differences in the way that like an aging man should take care of his skin as opposed to a woman, or is it very similar?
It is very similar, but there definitely are differences. A lot of people say everybody could use the same skincare. Well, it's going to depend on your skin type.
Okay.
Some people might be a little oilier. Some people might be a little bit drier. Are you spending all of your time outside? Are you spending most of your time inside at a desk? Are you under fluorescent lighting? What do you need? You have to find out the wants and needs first.
Okay, so let's break it down to start off with. What about somebody, I'll just be selfish and talk about myself. I spend all my time under this fluorescent lighting.
Yeah.
I mean, so what does that guy do? Or what does that guy do?
Well, you're a little different because skincare is what we put on topically. It soaks in, and then obviously it's going to work depending on what the ingredients are and how good the ingredients are, because ingredients are just like steak, for instance. You've got hamburger, you've got maybe fast food hamburger, and then you've got prime
choice. Prime. There.
You've got prime steak. A lot of people who go in and just grab stuff, maybe from the Walgreens or something like that, that's probably not premium product. What I deal with is premium product. So I've developed a skincare line.
I didn't even know this.
What?
I didn't know you had your own line.
Surprise.
Okay.
Yeah. I developed my own skincare line. And I tell people it was a little selfish because I started with my family, my mother, my children. How is this going to work? I have a boy. He's a man. I say boy, but he's a man.
And he's a genius. He's a mathematical genius.
He is a smart kid. But he's 27 years old. So making the skincare line, creating it, it was 7 years in the making. So he was going through having some acne issues.
Right.
My daughter, who is now 20 years old, Same thing. So I was making the skincare line and creating it with the different ingredients. If I put this with this and this with this is what it'll do
Nice.
to give results.
So
Because why bother?
are they customized? Or they're all customized for that individual?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Anytime
Interesting.
somebody comes in to the school, we skin type them, we determine what they need, and then we put together their own customized skincare line that they can have. We have all these elixirs, and we call them elixirs instead of serums because they're magical. They're magical. You could cocktail them together and they will do certain things for your skin. So if somebody's a little more dry, we're going to have certain ingredients that take care of that. If somebody's a little oilier, we have certain ingredients that take care of that.
I didn't know that. That's I swear to God, I brought her on here. I didn't even know that you did that. You know, and like for me, like I take saunas and I work out all the time. I do ice baths and cold showers and steam and all that. But that probably adds to the dehydration of my skin.
Yes and no, because you're drinking a ton of water and you're eating right.
Right.
And genetics.
Yeah, the genetics.
There's a lot there. That's huge. A lot of it is huge.
So for the average person that is gonna, like, let's just say there's nobody that's average, but let's say the guy that's 40 years old.
Yeah.
What are some things that he should do baseline to take care of his skin?
Let's do some eye cream. Everybody should be wearing eye cream. Shouldn't walk out of the house without it.
Okay.
That skin under there is just so delicate, so thin. Let's get some eye cream on there, get some hydration, helps with fine lines and wrinkles, but also nourishes it. A little sunscreen wouldn't hurt anybody. I absolutely believe the sun is so important. As you know, you've got to get that vitamin D.
That's the great irony in all this is because like as a nation, we're so deprived of vitamin D.
Yes.
Like everybody comes back from their blood work. Well, my cholesterol is really good and my ApoB, my C-reactive protein, but man, my vitamin D. And I'm like, it's so hard. I know, but so then what's the answer? Because we get too much sun exposure and the skin cancer and then not enough and lack of vitamin D. So what's your thought on sun exposure related to the aging of the skin?
Moderation.
Okay.
It's moderation. Let's go back to the 80s. Were we not putting baby oil?
Oh, sure. Did you do that too?
Crisco.
Really?
Baby oil. Yes.
Did you get dark?
Yes.
Really? Yeah.
Yes.
I always burned. Whenever I went out, I'd be like, 5 minutes in and everybody'd come back and they'd have these beautiful tans and I had like a burned nose. So I was never like a sun worshiper because like I burned so easily.
Okay, well there you go.
And now the top of my head gets burned really bad. So that's really bad. So
you got to put a little sunscreen on there. Whether it's a mineral or
at 40 eye cream.
I throw some eye cream, some hydration on there, get a good cleanser. You don't want to make it complicated.
And then as the age goes on and progresses, what are there other things that you need to add to it?
Yes, getting those dead skin cells off. That turnover is what makes those babies' bottoms.
Do you do it all over the whole body?
Sure,
is
you
that
can.
like what? So what do you use? Like a loofah sponge, or what do you use?
Use a loofah. Use some good cleanser. Use
On
a
your
dry
face?
or a dry brush. Do you have a dry brush?
I don't.
I'll hook you up.
Yeah. But so you get you dry brush your whole body.
Yeah, away from your heart.
Even your face.
No.
No. Okay, well, see, I don't know. That's why
that's too much. That's too much. You dry brush it, that you're going to cause injury.
Okay, so dry brush your body.
I would dry brush your body.
Okay.
Get those elbows, get the arms, legs especially, because usually people forget about their legs. They just
I bet.
They just get in the shower and let that water run over them. You got to scrub them.
And then the face, what do you use?
The face, you could do chemical or physical. So you could use scrubs, which would be a physical exfoliation. Or we could do chemicals, which are different chemical peels, and they're mild.
You know what? I want to really impress upon this to people is that it's like the really manly man, it's still so important to maintain great skin health.
Yes.
Your pores and the way that your body absorbs the sun and the way you sweat, it's just so impactful to your long-term health.
Absolutely.
So that's what, and I'm not doing any of this stuff. I do moisturize every day.
Yeah.
But I was just thinking about the way the human body evolves. It's just as we're 30, you have a demand 40, 50, 60, 70,
yeah.
and the reality is you have to do more as you get older, which is
Yeah.
stinks. But so
Yeah.
what about women then? What kind of stuff do you think that the 40-year-old woman should do?
It's all about retinol, the different
Okay.
acids. If you have hyperpigmentation, which is freckling, or we call them
Mm-hmm.
age spots, people say
Mm-hmm.
they have some age spots. You got to use acids.
Okay.
And there's so many different ones. Vitamin C is great.
A vitamin C
Vitamin
cream.
C, but where are we getting vitamin C? It's like, get some sunshine, get some
Right.
vitamin C, get some vitamin D. Diet, lifestyle.
Okay. Well, that's great. We can talk about that, but like, so for a female,
Yes.
more retinol based help skincare and vitamin C, or you apply it topically, or is it orally?
Well, you could absolutely do it orally through your
Okay, so
vitamins
it's the
and
same thing.
supplements.
Okay, great.
Absolutely.
So I was thinking that this was some sort of a skin application that we would use.
It is, because
Okay.
vitamin C, we call it BLT.
Mhm.
It'll brighten, lighten, and tighten.
Okay.
So vitamin C is
If you
perfect.
put it topically.
If you put it topically.
Okay, cool.
But they have to be premium ingredients, and I'll tell
Okay.
you why. Lesser ingredients will stay on the face, but those molecules are bigger.
Mm-hmm.
They'll stay on top, but they're not driving into your skin, giving the results that you need.
Okay.
So it might feel good, it might smell good, but it's not going to give you what you want. And you're spending all of this money. I mean, you see the advertising all the time,
Of
and you
course.
walk into any store and it's, floor to ceiling. It feels good, it smells good, but it's not giving you the results.
Right.
Use things just like clothes, just like food.
Well, just tell us where, give us your your website so people can get a hold of you. What is it?
It is skinschoolomaha.com. Skinschoolomaha.com.
And then right there they can order the stuff, and
they could get a hold of us. They could look at all of the different services that we give, and we use all of those products at the school.
Cool.
And the nice thing about it, I absolutely love it. The nice thing about the school is everything is supervised by licensed people.
So and then as every passing decade goes, you need just the same sort of retinol for women,
when you get
eye
older,
hydration.
It's that turnover. You want that skin turnover, getting rid of those dead
And
skin cells.
exfoliation
And then putting on, like I said, sun in moderation. There's some people that are like, always have that sunscreen on. Well, there's times where you walk outside and you don't have it on. Is that okay? Well, yeah, that's
What
okay.
about 15 minutes of sun exposure daily?
I don't have a problem with that. There are other schools of thought that would be like, absolutely not. Of course, it's going to cause aging when you're out in the sun. But
there's just
my
so
feeling
much
is different.
Okay, there's just so much really solid proof. Like when you get some sun exposure, especially like first thing in the morning, if you can walk out and you get that sun and it changes your autonomic nervous system. You go from, sympathetic to parasympathetic. It just changes your whole emotional state.
Yes.
And that's what's so important with the sun.
Yes, I agree. And if we constantly are slathering in something that is taking that away, that might not be a good idea. So
isn't it
I
incredible
think
how
moderation.
it's just like the traditional way we've been taught it just fills us with so much confusion. It's incredible.
You don't know who to believe or what to believe.
And that's kind of what like the whole 100,000 hours is all about. So, I mean, one thing about me is I've never pretended to be this incredible innovator or a pioneer, but what I've been is like super hyper vigilant about observing things. And you learn a lot over 100,000 hours. I mean, really, because like I've really been fixated on like not just being attentive to my customers, but being like totally immersed in every moment that I'm with that person. And I'm not just like giving and pushing information. I'm listening and hearing what they say. And so when you hear what somebody says and you kind of catalog it away, it can, over time, you kind of built this encyclopedia up here, that along with me just being like a lifelong autodidact. I'm just constantly learning and I'm taking all this information in and I filter it And I like, there's just a lot, and like so much of it, like you have to be able to focus what are the most important aspects of that, because we're inundated with stuff. And so that's kind of what has made me a unique individual. And that's why the $100,000 is just so different, because we are flooded with information all the time about, they make a lot of these so-called experts, and they probably are experts, but they make these broad accusations. These are the way you're supposed to eat and the way you're supposed to train. And I here's something that I found in this 40 years and 100,000 hours, is that individual that like pretends to know everything about everything, the wider you become, the shallower you are. And I think what I've always tried to be is, I don't want to be really long and shallow. I want to be really narrow and deep. And so my field of expertise is very much pertinent to the aging person. And even more specifically, and breaking that down, because like women are so much different than men.
Yes.
And I mean, you pointed out there are some differences, like, women need more retinol, and their skincare is slightly different. But when it comes to the metabolic processes with the hormones, menopause, perimenopause, they're different animals, man. Women are not just small versions of men. And that's what needs to be understood. And then so most of the experts related to fitness and nutrition, they're men. Most of the studies, almost all of the studies, have been performed upon men.
Why?
That's I like the whole studying of human performance, nutrition. It's kind of this broad spectrum of studies. It's called epidemiology. It's super flawed. I mean, it's super flawed. Like, you'll read about these things, like, they'll take this study that they did, 20 years ago in England with, people that were morbidly obese, so 400 to 500 pounds, and they have them, follow these certain diets, and they checking on them every 2 weeks. And they're like, gosh, it's amazing how some of these people, it worked and others didn't, and they were all on the same thing. And then you start asking the most incredible questions. You're like, well, were these people sequestered? Were you monitoring everything that they were eating, how they slept, how they moved? Oh, no, we were just sending them, questionnaires at the end of the 2 weeks. And I'm like, whoa, man. Again, it's interesting, because when we initially bring somebody into our organization, we always sit down with them and say, hey, tell me a little bit about what you're doing. Tell me, like, what are you eating for breakfast, lunch, dinner, snacks, alcohol consumption, hydration, sleep, all these things. And like, most people are really incapable of being very transparent, because they're subconsciously snacking and things like this. So you take the guy that's 450 pounds, holed up in his one room apartment. Is he accurately tracking? Oh yeah, I had 6 egg whites and a cup of oatmeal, and then for lunch I had a very small salmon salad with vinaigrette dressing. And of course, these things are, it's so incredibly inaccurate. They're forgetting the 4 bags of Cheetos that they had, and the dozen Cokes.
Well, and the guilt.
Yeah, of course.
That goes along with that, and the embarrassment that they don't want to be honest.
Exactly. And it's hard to be honest, because that's the thing, is when you start putting people in a situation where they're on this really regimented diet plan, then you feel boxed in, and then it's like overwhelming. Oh my gosh, what am I supposed to do here? What am I supposed to do there? And then, with that confusion, then all that information starts flooding your head. I call it paralysis by overanalysis. And like, it takes you down a really unhealthy path, neurotically, physiologically, hormonally. And so, especially related to women, we've been caught up in this cycle of like under eating, and this perception that skinny is good, skinny is healthy. and it's like since I've been going so long, I mean, you can remember, Courtney, what was the ideal body like when we were, growing up in the 80s and the early 90s?
Oh, the thinner the better.
Exactly. And the advice that was being given to girls at that time was, hey, portion control.
Oh yeah.
Don't eat too much with every meal, and skip breakfast, fasting, that's the way to go. That's how you're going to lose weight.
It was Big Red and Diet Coke in the 80s.
Yeah.
That's what Big Red and Diet Coke is what we lived off of.
I mean, isn't it incredible? But like now, as with my close observation on what works and what doesn't. Oh, and let me back up and tell you something, is that like I had such enormous obstacles to overcome when I started doing this, because I was very committed to health. And I understood that in order for a woman to be at her very best hormonally, metabolically, she needed to be lifting weights and she needed to be eating regularly. But who was I to say anything? Here I am, like a 24-year-old guy saying, well, this is what I think. And then, there was all this information that backed up the whole other side.
Oh yeah.
Cardio, do low intensity cardio, and then monitor your caloric intake. They made us think that the human body was on some kind of an abacus. Okay, I ate 100 calories. Now I got to burn off 100 calories. How about that?
But don't forget about the food pyramid that we were all talked into.
Yeah, that's
a whole. That's another episode.
The genesis of the food pyramid comes from a Framingham study done in 1950 about the American Heart Association. And it was like excuse me, I don't think anybody did these tests maliciously. I don't think that was the point, but they were so flawed.
Yeah.
Telling people to eat 8 servings of grains and, fruits and vegetables. And really, like, at the point of the pyramid was like meat. And it's like, wow, then you're creating an environment for that individual where they're constantly full of glucose and their bodies are flooding with sugars and they're not getting any protein. And that's just I think, honestly, that's the beginning of the obesity epidemic in our country. It's been a really free fall for like 70 years. But let me kind of talk a little bit about women as in like how different they are, because it's so important to recognize that the way that women were taught is like, if you go back in time, I was super blessed to go to this this fellowship, or it wasn't a fellowship, it was just an internship thing. I was in Cleveland, and I went there and I observed the Cleveland Clinic, which in the late 80s, that was the most cutting edge place to learn on how to change the human body. How can we improve longevity? What can we do? And there was this incredible doctor that was running. His name's Dean Ornish, and again, brilliant. Infinitely smarter than me. I'm not saying that I'm smarter than him, but I studied it. I immersed myself in that culture.
All those books he wrote.
Yes, he wrote all these books. It's all plant-based stuff. Yes. And he was like instrumental in like the plaque that forms in our vascular system with years of the wrong environment internally. He felt like he could reverse that with a plant-based diet and lots of zone 2 exercise. And some of what he had.
Wait, what's zone 2 exercise?
It's just kind of like a low intensity exercise where you could if you were to measure it, it's like 75% of your max heart rate. But it'd be like, so we could like go for a walk and you could be relatively conversational.
Okay.
But what happened is I just was observing, and I'm like, man, something doesn't add up here, because these people, like, is it going to improve their longevity? Well, hopefully. But is it going to improve their health span? How do they feel? How do they look? And I mean, most of the people involved in these studies were kind of morbidly unhappy, and they were, walking around with zero energy. Now, and I'm like, even as a very young man, at that time, I did not have the confidence to speak out and say, wait a minute.
Quality of life.
Yeah. And moreover, how about just like being in a place where you wake up and you have the energy to just go attack things and just be vibrant and have a state of mind, create an environment internally for your brain to thrive. That's what I was for.
Yeah.
And I just didn't witness that there. So I'm like, man, I walked out of there and I thought those guys are really good, but to me, there's something missing. And what I feel was missing is the way they approached exercise, everything, honestly, because the way they approached exercise, am I for cardiovascular? 100%. It's a very crucial element of strengthening your heart and lungs. But I don't believe we can exercise ourselves into great shape. And I don't believe that, it's something that should like be at the center of our thoughts all the time. Is like, oh, I got to do, 90 minutes today and 2 hours tomorrow. That's overwhelming. And the key, in my opinion, is that we got to build muscle mass. We have to build muscle, because earlier I said, well, skin is the first or second largest organ in the human body. Well, historically, they'd always say skin's the biggest organ of the whole body.
Sure.
But what about muscles? Muscles should be the largest organ in your body. It's part of your endocrine system. And let's not deny that. If you're a healthy, strong person and you're exercising and you're eating well, you're going to have muscle mass and you're going to feel good. You're going to be safe. You're going to age very well, and it's going to keep you disease-free. It's going to give you a greater likelihood of living with a disease-free state. So back in the late 80s and 90s, I would preach that to people. Girls would come in, women, and I'd be like, this is what we're going to do.
And everybody was saying, no, I want to be skinny.
I know, man. It was like I was constantly being shot down.
I bet.
You don't know what you're talking about, kid.
Yeah, more cardio.
But it was like, and again, let me emphasize that I do cardio. I think it's a very integral part of keeping my heart strong and my lungs highly functional, but it's a part of it. And like when I would talk to people about like, we would, test their body fat and their weight, and they'd be like, oh, I need to lose 30 pounds. My body fat's 38%. I'm like, who cares? Who cares about that? We're looking at everything through the wrong lens. Instead of looking at, oh, this is how much fat I have, I weigh this much. No, man. Let's look at how much muscle mass you have. Understand how important that is, because if I can take you and we can do your body fat and your measurements, and I say, oh, Courtney, your muscle mass, it's right now it's at 61. You know what we should do? Let's not think about reducing calories and walking yourself, counting steps. Let's think about, lifting weights more and eating more protein. And especially being strategic about when you eat your foods. And let's change that number. Let's add 10 pounds to that number. And we're going to focus on your glutes, your hamstrings, your upper back, your shoulders. We're going to build up that whole backside of your body. And what happens when we do that? It's magic. You lose 20 pounds. But you've gained 10 and it's made you lose 20. You look like a whole different person. And metabolically, it's incredible. Muscle mass, whenever you ingest a carbohydrate, it immediately converts to glucose. Now, the speed with which it converts is all based upon what type of carbohydrate. Is it a pop? Is it, a French fry? Is it a sweet potato? That's what dictates the speed of the absorption of the glucose. But where does the glucose go? Well, it goes into your liver, and that's a very finite space. It goes into your bloodstream, and we do not want high glucose in our bloodstream. It creates a hormonal, panic. Your pancreas kicks out insulin. Insulin sweeps it away. And in the short term, okay, we can deal with that. But over periods of time, it creates hormonal havoc. But the last place that the glucose gets absorbed is in the muscle mass. It's glucose disposal. It sucks it all up. it sucks up all the additional fatty acids floating through your bloodstream. And so when I would try to like walk people through this process in the 80s and their 90s, they'd be like, yeah, but I don't want to get big thighs. And I'm like, or the best one is like, I don't want to look like you. And I'm like, well, I've been working at this 2 hours a day for the last, 20 years. And now I'm going on 50 years of doing this. Don't worry about it.
Don't worry about it.
Wait,
we can stop before we get there.
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing is that like, we're never looking at like, getting massive. In all honesty, it's an impossibility. If we're lifting weights between 120 and 180 minutes a week, we're eating magnificently. Your body, especially as an aging woman or man, you're going to put on some muscle mass, but you're not going to get grossly muscular. It's physiologically impossible. But I feel like today people are starting to understand that.
They are to a point. Can I tell you what I think about this?
100%. That's why you're here.
Everything you're saying is brilliant. And I completely agree with you. It's what women for years, well, let's go back to the 80s. Let's go back to the 70s. 70s, what were we doing at dinner? It's like nobody thought about that. It's like everybody had their own bottle of Coke on the table. Remember that? You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
Nobody was thinking about that. Then all of a sudden we get into the 80s. Now we've got Jane Fonda. Now we've got Jamie Lee
Olivia
Curtis.
Newton-John.
Olivia Newton-John.
That's who I liked.
Let's get physical.
Yeah, I know. My God.
R.I.P. Rest her soul. She was amazing. But we've got that going on. And it was always skinny, skinny, skinny. You don't want to have any kind of definition at all. That wasn't good. Mm-hmm. And there was people like me who did not have that body type at all. I had a little business up front and behind, and that was not
But
cool.
The only people that really like the skinny look are who? Other girls.
Wrong.
No, well, no, I don't know many.
No. The media will tell you all of the magazines during that time.
Yeah, I know. I guess I'm just a different breed. I never really dug that look so much, but
because you knew what's what.
Yeah.
But growing up and having that thrown at you all day long, all of these girls, how did we all not have an eating disorder? Like I said, in the 80s, it was
neurotic behaviors.
The skinnier, the better. It was literally throw some bubble yum in and drink Diet Coke all day. That's what we did.
About the neurotic tendencies for nutrition with girls, it's like when you start thinking about, like, let's just look at I saw this guy the other day, and he was this really fit dude, and he ate 2 crumble cookies, and I think the crumble cookies, have you ever seen them?
Oh, from the store?
Yeah, they're giant. It's a brand. It's a crumble cookie, and they got all kinds like Hershey's Kisses built on them, and it's an incredible cookie.
Like a cake.
It is almost. But so his whole thing was, well, I just ate 2,200 calories of a crumble cookie. Now I have to go run it off. And I can I tell you something? The law of calories in, calories out, that's called the law of thermodynamics. Mm-hmm. And I'm here to tell you that I will argue that point with a lot of people, because if every time you ingest something, oh man, I had 10 ounces of noodles and I had pasta sauce and meatballs. Oh, I got to go burn off 1,200 calories. Yeah. It doesn't work that way. It doesn't. And
why doesn't it?
It just doesn't. And I mean, here's the thing. It goes back to that it's the personal metabolic place that we all are in. Everybody's different. But if you are actively exercising, you're building muscles, the muscle mass that you have, it sucks that glucose straight out of your body and it utilizes it as energy. Now, if you're totally sedentary, you have almost no muscle mass, and the muscle mass that you have is not healthy. It can be, it's very bad. It's very bad, because what happens is we get there's something called metabolic flexibility. Okay. So what happens is women are traditionally more metabolically flexible than men. Now, what does that mean? Well, what's that mean? Well, it means your ability to utilize glucose as energy and then fatty acids as energy. Okay. So when somebody becomes, if they've been constantly abusing sugars and they don't exercise, it's like they become, it's type 2 diabetes is essentially where you're at. Well, your body becomes metabolically inflexible, and then what happens, you are only able to utilize glucose as a form of energy to make your body work. So
how do you change it?
Muscle mass. But so this is okay, now we're kind of going all over the place. This is why Ozempic and Mounjaro and all the GLPs are very, very popular right now, because if you are somebody that's in an incredibly unhealthy place hormonally, and you want to change your body's composition, it's that like creating momentum, pushing that boulder and getting to make that first turn metabolically is tough. It's tough. And I've never lied about that, because you have to be hyper vigilant about your nutrition and your exercise. You have to build muscle mass. You have to be very calculating on the types of carbohydrates that you eat when your body is in that metabolically inflexible state. Now, then you take a GLP and you just stop wanting to eat. So it does upregulate your body's ability to be metabolically flexible. But the key is to not go there, not get into a place where you have metabolic inflexibility. You want your body to utilize, glucose and stored fatty acids as energy. And by the way, most women are just genetically predisposed to being that way. So the key is, from a hormonal perspective, when instead of counting calories and being neurotic and fixated about, I got my 10,000 steps in so I can have a glass of wine tonight,
you're not lying about any of it.
But instead of doing that, be mindful of the types of foods that you're eating. Try to eat single ingredient foods. Not many people become diabetic from apples and oranges and fruit. Even though there's fructose in it, it doesn't trip up the body's system as much as goldfish and cookies and crackers. So if you eat single ingredient foods, you're going to be infinitely better off from a hormonal perspective than you are when you're eating lots of processed stuff. And let me go back to this piece, and this is what's really important. Like, if there's something that somebody can walk away from this today, is that it's the importance of breakfast. Do you eat breakfast?
No.
Yeah.
Why?
So, did you eat breakfast when you were young? Did your mom make you breakfast?
Yes, and I felt like it always made me nauseous. I didn't feel good.
What did you eat? What did you typically eat?
The cream of wheat or the cereal?
Yeah.
It's maybe an egg.
It's kind of interesting, and this is where there is such an incredible departure from women to men, is that women, from hormonally, the way that their bodies are wired is, when they wake up, let's say hypothetically you wake up at 6:30, boom, the minute you wake up, your cortisol starts to creep up. The cortisol is a stress hormone, so your cortisol starts creeping up, and in about 30 minutes after you've been awake, you kind of hit a peak. And what's that stress hormone? It's because your body's seeking nutrients. It's crazy, because this is so counterintuitive to what we've been taught.
All of it is.
It is, because women have been told that the less you eat, the more you move, the healthier you're going to be. Well, that's just the exact opposite. It's insane. But this is what I've witnessed. I mean, this will blow your mind, but if you go back in time, how many of our kids that were our age were obese when we were growing up?
There weren't. Maybe one.
Okay.
Maybe
virtually none. And here's another thing is, like, and this is a really poor example, but I would say 99% of kids of our generation, of our vintage, they ate something for breakfast. Now, it could have been, Blueberry or Count Chocula with processed milk and a glass of juice, but they were getting something in.
Yeah.
And, then they had energy, they could focus more. Now, that's not what I'm recommending, but I cannot impress upon you enough that it does something metabolically just to eat something first thing in the morning. Your body, and this is my opinion, the circadian rhythms that we use to fall asleep and to understand when to be awake, those also dictate when we should eat. And for a woman, we have to, in order to create the best environment internally to thrive, to have muscle mass, to have energy, to be very cognitively powerful, we got to get something in your system right away. And I know it stinks.
Like what?
You could put a scoop of protein in your coffee.
Okay.
You could have a couple hard-boiled eggs, but you need something, because if you don't, then there's this whole Pandora's box of negative hormones that start kicking into your system, and you down-regulate metabolically. But here's what's fascinating. So then, like, what does the typical person do? Even like these incredibly sophisticated, smart, awesome women, they wake up. Of course, they don't eat. They're going to take a pre-workout. They're going to take a coffee. Then they're going to go. Then they're going to go exercise on a fasted state. In a fasted state, it does. Yeah, we'll see. And then my wife, for the last couple of years, I've got her, like, as she's running out the door, I'm like, have a protein shake, because, she would be the one that would be like jamming coffee and then going hitting the iron and then coming home, then eating breakfast. And thank God, at least she was eating breakfast at that time. But like, from a metabolic perspective, to put yourself in a place hormonally when you can be at peace, because what happens as cortisol goes up, there's something in your body called the autonomic nervous system. And there's two parts of it, the sympathetic side and the parasympathetic side. And they don't have anything to do with being sympathetic, but that's just what they're called. The sympathetic nervous system is that fight or flight. Okay, so ramp up cortisol 30 minutes after you still haven't eaten. Now you're caffeinated. Now your sympathetic hormones are going like this. Your parasympathetic hormones, the rest and digest side, they're suppressed. It's like this, and you're just cranking all day long, and then you're cranking coffee. And I call that state for a woman wired and tired.
Always.
It is.
Always.
But I think that, like, and I talk to lots of girls, and they're like, well, you know what? I've been successfully fasting for a long time. And I understand, but like, I'm glad that you feel good, but I want you to feel great. I want you to be younger next year. I want you to feel better tomorrow. And I promise you, if we can get women to eat 20 grams of protein within 30 minutes, what happens? Cortisol drops off. Parasympathetic hormones go up, sympathetic hormones go down. Now you can be at peace emotionally, because the sympathetic side of your hormones, that's what drives blood pressure, heart rate, all these things. And like, it's incredible. You eat, wow, my heart rate's down, my blood pressure's down, and I can focus more. I can be more attentive and be my best, with whatever I'm doing at the time. It's really impactful. So breakfast for women, and this is like such an enormous mountain to climb, because most women are like, well, I'm not hungry. You're not hungry in the morning, are you?
No.
My daughter, I always tell my daughter, she's 21. I'm like, honey, you got to eat something. And she goes to the University of Alabama. And I'm like, well, just have a protein shake. Okay. So I send her down protein shakes. I send her down like, a 5-pound tub. And then like 6 months later, like, how's everything going? Well, I'm eating breakfast every day. What do you have in a protein shake? You're still in the same 5-pound tub 6 months later. Come on now. Everybody thinks they can BS me. Well, come on. I know. But anyway, it's super impactful. To live at your best, women need to focus on, that protein first thing in the morning. Shut down your cortisol, elevate your parasympathetic nervous site, and thrive. That's what I want. I want you to thrive. I want you to lift weights. You got to build muscles. You have to be metabolically flexible. Weight training is the key to all this. It's gonna improve you metabolically in every way. And here's what's crazy, and this is what's even harder to digest, is that the older we get, the more protein we need.
How much? Because
I mean,
you see it across the
I
board
know.
that you should have whatever your weight is.
It is. I think that's
how much protein you
pretty
need.
good measuring stick. And
What?
I know
How do you get all that
it's
in?
insane. I know it stinks. Especially like if you skip breakfast, if you lose breakfast. Corey Young is this incredible guy that works with me, and like he came up with that. If you lose breakfast, you're going to lose the day. Well, man, I think he's right, because if you're losing breakfast, if you're skipping it, okay, now it's noon and I haven't had anything.
And you have to play catch up? Is that what you're saying?
You just won't. And if you, so it's kind of interesting. And this goes back to when we were kids and we were having, Cheerios and a whatever.
Yeah. And a banana.
And at best, my mother was a farmer. So we she would make that, and then she'd make me eat eggs too.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or sausage or something.
Sure.
Jimmy Dean's.
Jimmy Dean.
But what happens is that if you undereat all day long, you're constantly in a, you're in that high level of cortisol running through your body. And men, by the way, men are not the same way. Men are metabolically different creatures. They're much more successful at fasting, although I don't believe fasting is good, but they're better off with it. What happens is when we are in that constant state of hunger and then we eat, we tend to make lots of bad food choices later in the day. What
are you trying to say?
Well, no. Do you know what I mean, though? Like, how many times, but man, I skipped breakfast and I had a really light lunch, and then, you eat dinner and then you eat your way to bed, and it's like, and again, something else. I'm not saying that you can't eat late at night, but you don't want to mow down a bag of, goldfish,
right?
Or a handful of, Snickers mini bites. Those are not the things that you want to eat. But that's what happens when you're constantly under eating all day.
Todd.
It is. It's so the thing of it is, what I want to impress upon people is we got to have a great breakfast, especially women. You got to eat breakfast. You got to lift weights. And we'll dive into this so much more in other episodes. But, weight training and muscle building strength, it's the key to longevity, and it's the key to health span. And tell us in closing, give us some final words on skincare.
I will tell you, it's all connected. You could put whatever you want on your skin, but if you're not doing what you need to be doing on the other end, what is it going to matter? Just like you can't
out exercise a bad diet.
Exercise a bad diet. It's the same thing with skincare. You want to use the best that you can and go from there. But I will tell you, with our relationship, I know you're right. I've done what you have told me to do, and I've never felt better.
Yeah.
The weight came off. I didn't even try.
You look fantastic.
Thank you so much. But I'm getting back into it because, ladies, something that they don't tell you this at all, but when you're doing your thing, you're working out all the time, you're eating right, and then you decide, I'm tired. And this winter was a little rough. January lasted like 8 months. January was so long this year. I was snacking my way. COVID screwed up a lot of people. Snacking, the whole time, just comfort food. I will tell you, when you stop working out at my age,
you can't.
The 50 plus, it's gone.
Yeah.
It's gone.
Catabolic crisis. That's why we're like, on the next episode, we're going to really dive into muscle building and exercise and get rid of all those myths. But you got to find a great strategy to build muscle mass safely, because, what happens when somebody, hurts their foot, the average person? Well, I'm going to take off 6 weeks. Well, believe me, you're going to lose 10 pounds of muscle mass in 6 weeks, and then we're going to start over metabolically. So
consistency.
So let me finish off and say, I'm so grateful to you. She's incredible. And my mission in life is really different than most. I really want to make an incredibly joyful and grateful impact upon everybody that I touch. I'm not driven by money. I'm driven to help people, and I'm driven to make a difference in a few people's lives. And I think if I can do that, then they're going to go out and be a little bit cheerier, happier, and make a difference, and hopefully make the world a better place. So Todd Smith from 100,000 Hours, signing off on our first podcast. Courtney, you're amazing.
Thank you.
Thank you. See you next time.